The Galactic Peacekeeping Force's 42nd Special Operations Unit was renowned throughout three spiral arms of the Milky Way for their surgical precision, overwhelming firepower, and near-perfect mission completion rate. Their 12 members represented the apex predators and most advanced civilizations in known space. Except for Marcus Riley, the only human. Marcus was currently wedged halfway inside a maintenance shaft, his muffled curses echoing through the metal conduit as he wrestled with a malfunctioning power coupling. The ship's AI had designated the repair as routine with an estimated completion time of 15 minutes. That had been 2 hours ago. "Riley, your prolonged absence from the briefing is being noted with increasing disapproval," came the clinical voice of Tharian, the unit's Arthean tactical officer. 7 feet of exoskeletal perfection with 4 arms capable of operating independent weapon systems simultaneously, that Zell communicated entirely through modulated electromagnetic pulses that the ship's AI translated into spoken language. "Tell the commander I'm busy keeping his precious ship from venting atmosphere," Marcus grunted, finally managing to align the magnetic fields in the coupling. "Some of us weren't evolved in high radiation environments and don't have natural resistance to vacuum exposure." The truth was, Marcus had no business being on this ship. The GPF's Special Operations Units were comprised of the galaxy's most lethal species. The 8-limbed Vy'keen with their adaptive camouflage skin. The crystalline quartz collective entities who could survive stellar temperatures. The hypercognitive Velusians whose neural pathways processed information at quantum speeds. And then there was Marcus, 5'11", no exoskeleton, no telepathy, no redundant organs. Just a squishy bipedal mammal from a backwater planet that had barely figured out faster than light travel a century ago. When the coupling finally locked into place with a satisfying click, Marcus extracted himself from the shaft, wiping grease on his already stained uniform. The ship's corridors were designed to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and anatomies, but making the vessel feel simultaneously cramped and cavernous depending on which section you were in. As he hurried toward the command deck, he passed Commander Dravix, a massive Krell whose silicon-based physiology gave him the appearance of a sentient boulder. Dravix's 6 glowing sensory organs swiveled to track Marcus as he approached. "The maintenance technician finally emerges," Dravix rumbled, his voice like grinding tectonic plates. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd been absorbed into the ship's infrastructure." "Just doing my job, sir. Somebody has to make sure the lights stay on while you folks plan how to vaporize the next threat to galactic peace." Dravix's crystalline face couldn't form expressions recognizable to humans, but Marcus had learned to interpret the subtle shifts in the commander's mineral structure. "You are more than the maintenance technician, Riley. Despite Galactic Council's peculiar insistence that each unit include a human representative, you are still a member of this team." Marcus had heard variations of this speech before. The Galactic Council's decision to include humans in elite units remained controversial. Most species viewed it as political pandering to the newcomers to galactic society. "Understood, sir. Won't miss another briefing." "See that you don't. We depart for the Cygnus Arm in 6 hours. The situation on Proxima Centauri's mining colonies has deteriorated. Insurgent forces have taken control of 3 primary extraction facilities." Marcus froze. "Proxima Centauri? That's human territory." "Precisely why your presence at the briefing would have been beneficial," Dravix said, the mineral facets of his face rearranging in what Marcus recognized as the Krell equivalent of irritation. "This conflict involves several species, but the human colonies are at the epicenter." Later in the briefing room, Marcus studied the holographic projection of Proxima Centauri's 3rd planet, while Lieutenant Kale Vex, a serpentine Naga whose 4-meter frame was coiled efficiently around a specially designed chair, delivered her intelligence assessment. "Preliminary scans indicate standard insurgent tactics. They've seized the atmospheric processors and are threatening to shut them down unless their demands are met. Local forces have been neutralized, and all communication with the colony administrators has ceased." Marcus listened with growing unease. The other unit members discussed containment strategies, assault vectors, and non-terrestrial approach routes with the detached efficiency of beings who had evolved to be living weapons. To them, this was just another operation, To Marcus, this was his species' oldest off-world colony under threat. "What about the civilians?" he asked, interrupting Vex's detailed explanation of breaching protocols. 11 pairs of alien eyes, visual sensors, and sensory organs turned toward him. "The civilian population has been herded into the central habitat dome," Vex replied, her forked tongue flicking between words. "Approximately 12,000 individuals." "Mostly humans?" Marcus pressed. "Affirmative, though there are representatives from 23 other species present." Commander Dravix's crystalline form shifted. "Your concern for your species is noted, Technician Riley, but irrelevant to tactical planning. The 42nd exists to neutralize threats, not to engage in rescue operations." Marcus bit back a retort. This was why humans were considered the soft species of the galaxy. Their persistent concern for individual lives rather than strategic objectives remained a curiosity to most advanced civilizations. As the briefing continued, Marcus studied the schematics of the mining facility. While the others debated optimal insertion points, he noticed something odd about the facility's layout. The environmental control systems had been modified from standard galactic design. They were using a human-designed redundancy system, an approach often criticized by other species as inefficient and overly cautious. His thoughts were interrupted as Commander Dravix concluded the briefing. "We will arrive at Proxima Centauri in 17 standard hours. Final tactical assessment and equipment preparation will commence 4 hours prior to arrival. Dismissed." When? As the unit dispersed, Marcus looked out the viewport at the passing stars, the gravity of their mission settling in his chest. He wasn't just the maintenance tech anymore. He was heading to a human colony under siege, with 11 of the galaxy's most lethal beings as his teammates. And not one of them thought his presence made any difference at all. Proxima Centauri glowed an angry red through the viewports as the GPF cruiser decelerated from FTL. The mining colony on PCB-3 hung in orbit around the flaring star, a collection of interconnected modules and domes that resembled a metallic fungus growing on the planetoid's rocky surface. "Spectral analysis indicates no unusual energy signatures," reported Zinn, the unit's photovoric officer, whose translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent light patterns. "Atmospheric processors are functioning within normal parameters." "Calm silence continues," added Vex. "No response to standard hailing frequencies." Marcus studied the colony through the magnified viewport display. Something felt off, but he couldn't quite identify what was triggering his unease. The others were focused on tactical data radiation levels, energy outputs, defensive capabilities, while Marcus was staring at the colony's exterior lights. "Those maintenance beacons aren't following standard patterns," he said, almost to himself. Virex, a Vy'keen whose mottled skin was currently mimicking the metallic tones of the ship's interior, turned 3 of his eye stalks toward Marcus. "Explain," he demanded. Marcus pointed to the blinking lights dotting the colony's outer ring. "Human mining facilities use a time-encoded maintenance beacon system. Different patterns indicate different statuses. Those beacons are blinking in a warning configuration. It's subtle, but they're not running the all-clear sequence they should be." Commander Dravix's crystalline body shifted with a sound like pebbles sliding against each other. "The insurgents may have altered them deliberately, or they may be malfunctioning." "Maybe," Marcus conceded, "but that's not a standard error pattern either." The commander's sensory organs pulsed. "Your observation is noted, Technician Riley. However, our approach remains unchanged. We will dock at the administrative hub as planned." 4 hours later, the 42nd unit had successfully docked with the mining colony. Initial scans showed no immediate threats, and the colony's automated systems had allowed them entry without resistance, which only heightened Marcus's suspicion. The insertion team consisted of 6 members: Commander Dravix, Vex, Virex, Zinn, a quartz collective entity called Prism, and, surprisingly, Marcus. He'd been included primarily because of his familiarity with human facility layouts, despite his lack of combat training. As they moved through the eerily silent docking bay, Marcus noticed more inconsistencies. The bay was immaculate, too immaculate for a facility under hostile occupation. "This doesn't make sense," he whispered to Kale Vex, whose serpentine body was slithering alongside him. "Mining bays are never this clean. There should be ore residue, equipment parts, something." The Naga's tongue flicked out, sampling the air. "I detect no unusual chemical signatures. All environmental conditions are within expected parameters." They proceeded deeper into the facility, moving through dimly lit corridors toward the central command hub. Marcus's sense of wrongness intensified with each step. The corridors were empty of personnel, yet showed no signs of violence or hasty evacuation. When they reached the central hub, they found it operational but deserted. Workstations hummed quietly. Displays showed normal operational data, but there wasn't a single living being in sight. "This is consistent with hostage scenarios," said Prism, the crystalline entity's voice resonating from its entire form. "The insurgents have likely concentrated all personnel in a defensible location." Marcus moved to a workstation and began accessing the facility's logs. As a maintenance technician, he lacked the tactical expertise of his teammates, but he knew how to navigate human computer systems better than any of them. "That's odd," he murmured, scrolling through data. "According to these logs, the atmospheric processors were taken offline for maintenance 48 hours ago, but all environmental readings show they're functioning normally." Commander Dravix moved to examine the data. Could the logs have been tampered with? Possibly. But why fake a maintenance shutdown? If I wanted to hide something, I'd make everything look normal, not create inconsistencies. Suddenly, Virex's skin rippled with warning patterns. Movement detected in adjacent sectors. Multiple signatures approaching from 3 directions. The unit formed a defensive perimeter, weapons ready, as the doors to the command hub slid open. Instead of armed insurgents, however, they were met by what appeared to be ordinary mining personnel, humans, Traxians, and several other species, all wearing standard mining corporation uniforms. "Welcome to PCB-3 mining facility," said a human woman at the front of the group, her voice eerily flat. "How may we assist the Galactic Peacekeeping Force today?" Something about her eyes set off alarm bells in Marcus's mind. They were focused yet vacant, like she was reading from an internal script. Commander Dravix stepped forward. "We are responding to reports of an insurgent takeover of this facility. Identify yourself." "I am Facility Coordinator Jensen. There has been no insurgent activity at this facility. Operations continue at optimal efficiency. Would you like a tour of our extraction operations?" Marcus noticed subtle, inconsistent movements among the assembled workers, small twitches, heads tilting at odd angles, fingers flexing in unnatural patterns. "Commander," he said quietly, "something's controlling these people. Look at their micro-movements." Before Dravix could respond, a blinding flash erupted from the center of the mining personnel. Marcus instinctively threw himself to the floor as his teammates activated various defensive capabilities. Virex's skin hardened into armor plating. Prism refracted the light harmlessly, and Dravix's silicon form simply absorbed the energy. The seemingly ordinary workers suddenly moved with unnatural speed and coordination, producing weapons from hidden compartments in their clothing. What had appeared to be humans and various aliens now moved with identical, machine-like precision. "Neural hijackers," Kale Vex hissed, her body undulating as she dodged energy blasts. "The entire population has been compromised." Marcus scrambled behind a console as the firefight erupted. Neural hijacking explained everything: the inconsistent behavior, the too-perfect facility, the false distress call. Some external force had taken control of the colony's population and was now using them as weaponized puppets. As his teammates engaged the controlled workers with careful, non-lethal tactics, Marcus noticed a pattern in the attackers' movements. They weren't fighting like trained soldiers, they were operating with the efficiency of networked machines, covering angles and approaches with mathematical precision. "They're being controlled centrally." He shouted over the chaos. "Look for signal patterns, not combat formations." Commander Dravix acknowledged the insight with a pulse of his sensory organs. Scan for unusual electromagnetic signatures. The photovoric officer's translucent body pulsed as it absorbed and analyzed the electromagnetic spectrum, detecting unusual quantum frequency transmissions emanating from the atmospheric processor control center. That explained the fake maintenance logs. The atmospheric processors weren't down for maintenance. They'd been repurposed as transmission amplifiers for the neural hijacking signals. As the unit fought their way back toward the exit, Marcus caught glimpses of the controlled workers' fighting style. Despite their coordination, they moved with a strange rigidity, as if whoever or whatever was controlling them didn't fully understand how organic bodies were supposed to move. When Virex took a direct hit from an energy weapon and collapsed, Marcus found himself dragging the far heavier alien behind cover, adrenaline surging through his system. "Fall back to the ship," Commander Dravix ordered. "This is not an insurgency, this is an invasion scenario beyond our initial parameters." As they retreated under heavy fire, Marcus couldn't help but wonder why his instincts had picked up on the wrongness before any of his far more advanced teammates. The neural hijackers had fooled the sophisticated sensors and enhanced senses of the galaxy's apex predators, but they hadn't quite managed to replicate human behavior convincingly enough to fool another human. That small advantage wouldn't mean much, though, if they couldn't make it back to their ship alive. The 42nd Unit's retreat through the mining facility quickly devolved from tactical withdrawal to running for their lives. The neural hijacked workers pursued them with single-minded determination, their movements becoming increasingly coordinated as whatever controlled them adapted to the situation. "They're cutting us off from the docking bay," Kale Vex called out, her serpentine body coiling as she fired precisely aimed stun bolts at their pursuers. Marcus helped support the injured Virex, whose adaptive camouflage was malfunctioning after the energy blast, leaving him flickering between various colors and textures. The Vy'keen was heavy, and Marcus's human muscles strained under the weight. "The left corridor," Marcus gasped, recognizing the facility layout. "Maintenance tunnels run parallel to the main corridors. We can use them to bypass the blockade." Commander Dravix's crystalline form rotated toward him. "Are you certain?" "Human mining facilities are all built on the same basic template. Trust me." "Me?" The commander hesitated only a fraction of a second, an eternity in combat terms, before giving the order. 42nd, follow Riley's lead." Marcus guided them to a seemingly blank section of wall and ran his hand along the seam until he found the hidden access panel. As he'd suspected, the neural hijackers hadn't accounted for maintenance access points in their ambush strategy. The panel slid open to reveal a narrow utility tunnel, cramped even for Marcus. For beings like Dravix and Kale Vex, it would be extremely confining. "This may be problematic," Prism observed, its crystalline structure glinting in the dim emergency lighting. "No choice now," Marcus replied, already climbing in. "Zin can go first since they're most adaptable. Virex, you'll need to compress your form. Commander, you'll have to reconfigure your mineral structure to something more streamlined." For a moment, Marcus thought he'd overstepped by giving tactical suggestions to beings who had evolved for warfare. To his surprise, they complied without argument. Zin's photovoric body simply flowed into the tunnel like luminescent water. Virex painfully compressed his injured form, and Commander Dravix's silicon body actually reshaped itself into a more cylindrical configuration. As they crawled through the claustrophobic space, the sounds of pursuit became more distant. Marcus navigated the tunnel system from memory, recalling facility schematics he'd studied during brief downtime on their journey. Being the soft species maintenance tech had its advantages after all. "The docking bay should be 50 meters ahead, but we'll emerge in the maintenance substation first," Marcus whispered. "We'll need to cross 30 meters of open space to reach our ship." "Thermal readings indicate multiple entities in the docking bay," Zin reported, their bioluminescent patterns dimming to avoid detection. "They are stationed at optimal intercept positions." "It's an ambush," Kale Vex hissed. "They anticipated our escape route." Marcus's mind raced. The neural hijackers were learning, adapting to their tactics with machine-like efficiency. What they needed was something unpredictable, something no logical system would anticipate. "I have an idea," he said. "But you're all going to hate it." Commander Dravix's reformed sensory organs pulsed. Proceed. No. We need to create a diversion, but not where they expect it. Marcus pointed to a junction ahead that leads to the atmospheric control substation. If we can trigger an emergency venting sequence, it'll set off alarms throughout the facility. That would alert them to our position, Prism pointed out. Exactly, but not our actual position. They'll assume we're making for the processor controls to disable their neural transmitter. Meanwhile, we double back through this tunnel here. He traced a route on the schematic displayed on his wrist unit and approached the ship from underneath, through the docking clamp access port. The alien members of the unit exchanged glances, their various sensory organs conveying confusion and skepticism. That is highly inefficient, Vex said. The probability of success is low by any logical calculation, Marcus interrupted. That's exactly why it might work. These neural hijackers are operating on logic and pattern recognition. We need to do something illogical. After a tense moment, Commander Dravix's crystalline structure shifted. Implement your plan, Riley. 42nd, prepare for emergency extraction protocols. Marcus set up the diversion by reprogramming a maintenance drone to trigger the atmospheric venting sequence, then led the unit through a series of increasingly narrow maintenance tunnels. For once, his smaller human frame was an advantage, as he could navigate spaces that his alien teammates struggled with. When they reached the docking clamp access port, essentially a glorified airlock used for external repairs, Marcus realized the next problem. The external hatch required an authorization code he didn't have. I can't override this, he admitted as the sounds of alarms echoed through the station. Not without more time. Prism moved forward, its crystalline structure reconfiguring. Step aside. The quartz collective entity pressed against the hatch, its body flowing into the microscopic gaps in the metal. With a sound like cracking ice, Prism's crystalline structure expanded within the locking mechanism, shattering it from inside. Efficient, Marcus commented, impressed. They emerged onto the exterior of the docking clamp, now having to traverse the final distance to their ship along the outside of the station. Protected only by their combat suits' limited environmental shields, they moved as quickly as possible across the exposed metal surface. The ship was just ahead, its docking hatch tantalizingly close, when Zin's body suddenly flared bright. Energy weapons charging inside the bay. They've detected us. Before anyone could react, the bay doors began to open, exposing them to the armed neural hijacked workers within. In open space, with minimal cover and compromised shields, they would be easy targets. Marcus reacted on instinct. Grabbing a multi-tool from his belt, he jammed it into the nearest external control panel and overrode the safety protocols for the docking clamp. With a violent shudder, the entire clamp began to retract, pulling their ship away from the station before the bay doors could fully open. Annual override on docking clamp 7, shouted one of the hijacked workers, their voice unnaturally flat despite the urgent situation. As the gap between the station and their ship widened, Commander Dravix assessed the situation immediately. Jump. The 42nd unit launched themselves across the growing void. The aliens, with their enhanced physiology, made the crossing with relative ease despite their injuries. Marcus, with his merely human muscles, barely managed to grab the edge of their ship's exterior hatch, his fingers scrabbling for purchase on the smooth metal. For a terrifying moment he hung suspended above the void, watching Proxima Centauri's angry red light illuminating his dangling boots. Then a crystalline hand grasped his arm, hauling him inside with irresistible strength. That, Commander Dravix stated as the hatch sealed behind them, was indeed illogical. Inside the ship, emergency protocols engaged automatically. The engines fired, pulling them away from the station as several energy blasts dissipated harmlessly against their shields. As Marcus collapsed against a bulkhead, lungs burning and heart pounding, he noticed his alien teammates looking at him with their various sensory organs. There was something new in their regard, not quite respect perhaps, but definitely reassessment. How did you know they wouldn't anticipate that approach? Vex asked, her serpentine form coiling into a more relaxed position. Marcus managed a weak smile. I didn't. That's the point. Sometimes the best move is the stupid one that no one expects because it's too stupid to consider. Virex, whose camouflage was stabilizing as the ship's medical systems worked on his injuries, turned his eye stalks toward Marcus. That is not a recognized tactical doctrine. Welcome to humanity, Marcus replied, finally catching his breath. We'll hold my beer and watch this passes for a battle plan. The 42nd Unit regrouped in the ship's tactical chamber, a spherical room where holographic displays could create three-dimensional representations of any battlefield. Currently, it showed the mining colony slowly rotating against the red backdrop of Proxima Centauri. Neural hijacking technology of this sophistication exceeds known capabilities of any recognized galactic power, stated Prism. The quartz collective entity's crystalline form refracting the holographic light into complex patterns. Commander Dravix's silicon body had resumed its normal configuration, sensory organs pulsing as he absorbed the tactical data. This constitutes a Class 1 threat under Galactic Peacekeeping Force protocols. We must neutralize the controlling mechanism before the technology can spread. Marcus sat in his human-adapted chair, feeling distinctly out of place in this council of living weapons. Yet they were all looking at him now, waiting for his input. What? He asked, suddenly self-conscious. You predicted elements of their behavior that our tactical systems missed, K.L. Vex explained, her serpentine body coiled in what Marcus had learned was her thinking posture. Your insights regarding the neural hijackers may be valuable. Marcus hadn't expected this, the elite aliens actually soliciting his opinion. He cleared his throat. Okay, well, whoever these neural hijackers are, they think like machines. They're incredibly efficient, logical, and adaptive, but they don't understand organics at an intuitive level. That's why the behavior patterns felt wrong to me, they were too perfect. Zin's photovoric body pulsed with light patterns. Your species possesses particularly chaotic neural architecture. This may provide immunity to certain control frequencies. It's not immunity, Marcus clarified. It's unpredictability. Humans are walking contradictions. We create elaborate safety protocols, then ignore them because they're inconvenient. We develop logical systems, then rely on gut feelings. We're simultaneously the species that invented both nuclear physics and the banana slicer. The aliens exchanged confused glances at the reference. It's a single-purpose kitchen tool that does what a knife already does, Marcus explained. It's completely unnecessary, but we made it anyway because we could. Inefficient, commented Virex, whose mottled skin had finally stabilized into its natural camouflage pattern. Exactly, that's our superpower. We're inefficient in ways that make no sense to logical systems. Commander Dravix's crystalline structure shifted thoughtfully. You are suggesting we employ inefficiency as a tactical advantage? I'm suggesting we employ human thinking. When faced with a superior opponent, humans don't try to beat them at their own game. We change the game entirely. Marcus stood up and approached the holographic display. These neural hijackers have taken over the atmospheric processors to amplify their control signal. They expect us to target that directly because it's the logical approach. It is the optimal approach, K.L. Vex pointed out. That's why it won't work, Marcus countered. They'll have their heaviest defenses there. Instead, we need to think like humans facing overwhelming odds. We need to cheat. The word sent ripples of discomfort through the alien team members. The concept of cheating was anathema to species that had evolved within rigid predator-prey relationships. Efficiency, directness, overwhelming force, these were the tactical cornerstones of their combat philosophies. Before I joined the GPF, Marcus continued, I worked salvage operations in the asteroid belt of my home system. We once had a situation where a mining drill punched into a pocket of pressurized gas, causing a catastrophic blowout. The automatic safety systems failed and we were looking at total station loss. How is this relevant? Virex asked. Because what saved us wasn't the backup systems or emergency protocols. It was my supervisor, who'd been through something similar 30 years earlier. He intentionally triggered a secondary explosion in a different section. which created a pressure wave that sealed the initial breach long enough for us to evacuate. It was completely against all safety protocols, probably violated a dozen regulations, and it saved everyone's lives. Marcus pointed to different sections of the holographic mining colony. These neural hijackers are using the colony's systems against its people. So we need to use the systems against the hijackers. Instead of attacking the atmospheric processors directly, we trigger cascading system failures that force the hijackers to divert resources. Deliberately causing system failures contradicts our mission to preserve the colony, Commander Dravix noted. Not if we control which systems fail and how, Marcus explained. It's called controlled chaos, something humans excel at because we've been practicing it our entire evolutionary history. To Marcus's surprise, the commander's crystalline form shifted in what he recognized as agreement. Technician Riley, outline your proposed strategy. For the next hour, Marcus explained concepts that were second nature to humans but revolutionary to his alien teammates. Murphy's Law, the tactical application of paranoia, and the art of improvisation. He watched as beings evolved for logical, efficient combat struggled to grasp the counterintuitive approaches he suggested. So you intentionally create multiple points of failure, Kale Vex was trying to understand. Because we assume something will go wrong anyway, Marcus finished. Humans don't expect perfect execution, we expect disasters and build contingencies for our contingencies. This seems needlessly complex, Prism observed. That's exactly the point. Complexity is our ally against a logical enemy. They'll be looking for the optimal approach. We'll give them 12 suboptimal approaches simultaneously. Gradually, the 42nd unit began to grasp what Marcus was proposing. Not a frontal assault on the neural hijackers' control center, but a multi-pronged attack on peripheral systems that would create confusion, divide the enemy's attention, and ultimately open unexpected pathways to their true objective. As the plan took shape, Marcus noticed something changing in how his teammates interacted with him. The polite tolerance they'd shown the soft species maintenance tech had transformed into something closer to genuine interest. They were seeing, perhaps for the first time, that human unpredictability wasn't just a quirk, it was a tactical asset. We will proceed with Riley's strategy, Commander Dravix finally announced. Prepare for insertion in 3 standard hours. And the commander's sensory organs pulsed with an emotion Marcus couldn't quite identify. Riley will take point on tactical coordination. Marcus blinked in surprise. Me? But I'm not. You are the tactical specialist in human-style asymmetric warfare, Dravix stated, as if it were an obvious fact. This mission requires human thinking. You will provide it. As the unit dispersed to prepare, Kale Vex lingered near Marcus. In my species' evolutionary history, the serpentine alien said quietly, we developed highly predictable hunting behaviors because our prey evolved equally predictable escape responses. It was a balanced system with optimal energy expenditure on both sides. That makes sense, Marcus replied, not sure where she was going with this. Humans evolved differently. Your predator-prey relationships were chaotic, with constant adaptations and counter-adaptations. It produced a species that sees patterns where none exist and breaks patterns intentionally. Her tongue flicked out thoughtfully. Perhaps this is why your kind makes even apex predators uncomfortable. With that cryptic observation, she slithered away, leaving Marcus to wonder if he'd just received a compliment or a warning. Operation Murphy, named by Marcus after the human law that states anything that can go wrong will go wrong, began with what appeared to be a catastrophic equipment failure. The 42nd unit's ship, seemingly damaged from their earlier escape, it began venting plasma from its propulsion system as it approached the mining colony on an erratic trajectory. Distress signal broadcasting on all frequencies, reported Zinn, their photovoric body dimmed to minimal luminescence. Colony automated systems are responding as anticipated. Marcus watched the holographic display as the colony's defensive grid reconfigured to intercept their apparently out-of-control vessel. They're taking the bait. Emergency docking protocols have been activated in Bay 12 that's on the opposite side from the atmospheric processors. Commander Dravix's crystalline structure shifted into combat configuration, hardening into weapon-bearing protrusions. Commence Phase 2. The damaged ship suddenly stabilized its course, executing a perfect deceleration burn that brought it within meters of the colony's exterior. Rather than docking, however, the ship deployed 5 small objects that attached themselves to different sections of the colony's hull. Distraction packages deployed, Vex confirmed, her serpentine body coiled tightly in anticipation. Detonation in 3, 2, 1. The packages didn't explode. Instead, they began broadcasting complex electromagnetic signals designed to mimic critical system failures throughout the colony. Alarms blared, emergency lights flashed, and automated safety protocols initiated lockdowns in multiple sections. Chaos successfully initiated, Prism observed, its crystalline structure glinting with reflected emergency lights. Neural network response patterns indicate confusion. Marcus grinned. They're used to controlling perfectly coordinated systems. Let's see how they handle everything failing at once. The next phase unfolded as the ship performed a rapid maneuver to dock at a maintenance airlock near the colony's waste reclamation system, perhaps the least strategic entry point possible, and therefore the least defended. As the unit prepared to disembark, Marcus distributed specialized equipment he'd configured from the ship's supplies. These are disruptors calibrated to interfere with the neural hijacking frequency. They won't break the connection, but they'll create dead zones where the signal is weakened. Virex examined the crude device with his eye stalks. This appears to be assembled from communication equipment. And is that a food processor component? The mixer motor generates a counter-harmonic to the hijacker's carrier wave, Marcus explained. It's not elegant, but it works. Improvisation, Commander Dravik stated. It wasn't a question but an acknowledgement of the human approach they were adopting. As they entered the colony through the waste reclamation airlock, Marcus felt strangely calm. The maintenance passageways were his natural environment, cramped, utilitarian spaces designed for function rather than form. While his alien teammates had to adapt their combat styles to the confined spaces, Marcus moved with the ease of someone who'd spent his career crawling through similar tunnels. First junction ahead, he whispered. According to the colony schematics, we should encounter resistance in 3, 2, 1. The junction remained empty. Marcus said, genuinely surprised. That's not right. Your prediction was incorrect? Vex asked, tongue flicking to taste the air. Yeah, and that's wrong. They should be guarding this junction. It's a critical neural pathway in their network. Marcus frowned, then his eyes widened. Unless they're adapting to expect the unexpected from us. Commander Dravik's sensory organs pulsed. Explain. They're learning from our previous encounter. They've realized we don't take the obvious route, so they're not guarding the obvious choke points. Marcus thought quickly. Which means they're probably overguarding the non-obvious routes. This is becoming unnecessarily complex, Prism commented. Welcome to human tactical thinking, Marcus replied. When in doubt, add another layer of second guessing. He studied the schematic on his wrist display. New plan. We take the most obvious route possible. His alien teammates stared at him with their various sensory organs. The direct approach? Virex sounded almost offended by the suggestion. Directly through central processing? Exactly. They'll expect us to be clever and sneaky, so we'll be obvious and direct instead. It's meta-unpredictability. After a moment's consideration, Commander Dravik nodded. Proceed. The 42nd unit emerged from the maintenance tunnels into the main corridor leading directly to central processing. As expected, it was completely unguarded. I don't like this, Virex muttered, his skin cycling through anxious color patterns. That's the point, Marcus replied. They don't either. They're scrambling to figure out what we're really doing while we're just walking in the front door. They encountered their first resistance at the Central Hub's entrance, 2 neural hijack security officers, whose movements betrayed momentary confusion at the unit's direct approach. Deploy disruptors, Marcus ordered, activating his makeshift device. The effect was immediate. The controlled workers' movements became jerky and uncoordinated as the counter-harmonic interfered with the neural signal. Vex and Virex subdued them efficiently, while Xene analyzed the disruption pattern. Signal degradation confirmed, the photovoric officer reported. Counter-harmonic is effective within a 12-meter radius. Then we move in tight formation, Commander Dravix ordered. Riley, lead the approach. Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline as he realized the galaxy's most elite combat specialists were now following his tactical lead. They progressed through the central hub toward the atmospheric processor control room, encountering increasingly disorganized resistance. They're adapting, Prism observed as they fought through another group of controlled workers. Signal patterns are shifting to compensate for disruption. That's fine, Marcus replied, adjusting his device. Predictable adaptation is easier to counter than unpredictable. They're still thinking linearly. At the processor control room door, they encountered their most significant obstacle, a barricade of controlled workers armed with mining equipment converted into makeshift weapons. Direct approach has become problematic, Commander Dravix noted dryly. Marcus studied the situation. They've committed their resources to the obvious entrance, which means he pointed to an overhead maintenance hatch. That's probably clear. That access point is not on the schematics, Vex observed. Exactly. Human mining engineers always put in unofficial shortcuts to make their jobs easier. It's against regulations, but everybody does it. Using Virex's enhanced strength, they access the hidden maintenance passage and bypass the heavily defended entrance. Inside the control room, they found the source of the neural hijacking, a crystalline device integrated with the atmospheric processor's main console. Unknown technology, Prism reported, analyzing the alien device. Quantum entanglement-based neural interface. Can we disable it? Commander Dravix asked. Marcus examined the integration points. Not without risking a feedback pulse that could fry every controlled worker's neural pathways. We need to disrupt it gradually. We lack time for gradual approaches, Virex pointed out as alarms indicated reinforcements converging on their position. Marcus's mind raced through possibilities. What if we don't need to disable it? What if we just repurpose it? His alien teammates watched in confusion as Marcus began rerouting connections from his disruptor into the neural transmitter. The colony's environmental systems operate on adaptive algorithms, he explained while working. If we feed the neural controller contradictory environmental data, it will attempt to correct non-existent problems, Zinn finished, understanding dawning and fluctuating light patterns. Exactly. We make it think the atmospheric composition is fluctuating wildly. It'll be so busy trying to stabilize imaginary problems that it won't have bandwidth to maintain neural control. The gamble worked. As Marcus's jury-rigged interface fed chaotic data into the system, the neural control signal began to degrade. Throughout the colony, the hijacked workers started to regain autonomy, confusion and panic replacing their machine-like coordination. Control patterns disintegrating, Prism confirmed, neural network failing. Marcus allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. Never try to out-logic a species that invented both quantum physics and the electric hot dog cooker. 3 days after Operation Murphy, the 42nd Unit gathered in the ship's communal area for mission debriefing. The neural hijacking device had been contained for study, and Galactic Council specialists were helping the colony's population recover from their ordeal. Analysis confirms the technology originated from the quantum void beyond the Cygnus barrier, Commander Dravix reported, his crystalline structure gleaming under the ship's lights. This appears to have been an exploratory incursion, rather than a full invasion attempt. Lucky us, Marcus commented, nursing a cup of coffee, the only human beverage aboard the ship. Next time they'll be prepared for us. Perhaps, Vex replied, her serpentine form arranged in an unusually relaxed posture. But they will be prepared for logical counters to their technology. They will not anticipate humans. The way she said humans had changed subtly since their first meeting. No longer was it tinged with dismissive tolerance. Now there was something like respect, or at least acknowledgement. The Galactic Council has requested a full report on the tactical approaches employed in this operation, Commander Dravix announced. They are particularly interested in what they term human-style asymmetric countermeasures. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. They want my tactics? The stuff I was making up as we went along? 6 other special operations units have already submitted formal requests for human tactical advisors, Dravix continued, his sensory organs pulsing with what Marcus now recognized as amusement. It seems your species' unpredictability has acquired strategic value. Virex's skin rippled with skeptical patterns. The effectiveness of human tactics against this specific enemy does not ensure universal applicability. No, Marcus agreed. But it proves something important. Sometimes the most advanced approach isn't the best one. Sometimes you need someone who's willing to hit the problem with a wrench and see what happens. An inelegant but accurate assessment, Prism commented, crystalline structure shifting into what Marcus had learned was their version of laughter. As the debriefing concluded, Marcus found himself alone with Commander Dravix in the observation deck, watching the stars streak by as they returned to Galactic headquarters. The Council initially mandated human inclusion in special operations units as a political concession, Dravix said, breaking the comfortable silence. Your species had just joined the Galactic Assembly, and ceremonial positions were created to acknowledge your contribution. I figured as much, Marcus replied. Hard to believe the maintenance tech was supposed to be taken seriously as a team member. Indeed. Yet it appears the Council's politically motivated decision has yielded unexpected tactical advantages. The commander's crystalline structure shifted thoughtfully. Perhaps there is wisdom in diversity beyond simple political expediency. Marcus smiled. That might be the most human thing I've ever heard you say, Commander. 3 weeks later, the 42nd Unit deployed to the Orion sector to investigate unusual activity at a deep space research facility. As they prepared for insertion, Marcus noticed something different. The other members of the unit were actually listening to his tactical suggestions. Not with reluctant tolerance, but with genuine interest. When they entered the facility and encountered unexpected resistance, it was Virex who turned to Marcus and asked, what would a human do in this situation? Marcus grinned and pulled out a completely unauthorized modification he'd made to standard-issue equipment. Something stupid, he replied, that just might work. And behind him, for the first time, stood 11 of the galaxy's most lethal beings, ready to follow the human's lead. Sometimes evolution's greatest achievement wasn't the perfect predator, but the imperfect survivor who could think outside the box even when the box was designed by vastly superior intelligences. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, the courage to be gloriously, unpredictably wrong until somehow, against all logic, they stumbled into being right.